Joe receives an angry phone call from his ex-wife Donna, who reminds him that it's their daughter's 3rd birthday. An argument erupts when he dismisses the significance of the occasion, claiming that Mia won't remember whether he's present or not. Meanwhile, the agent successfully closes a deal with Daniel, giving credit to Judy for her help. However, Joe misinterprets Judy's assistance as romantic interest and flirts with her, causing everything to go awry. The advertising agent's life is left in disarray. Feeling ashamed and intoxicated, Joe aimlessly wanders into Chinatown where he impulsively purchases a squeaky Buddha figurine. He stumbles towards his friend Chucky's bar, but Chucky turns him away. While walking, Joe accidentally bumps into a woman carrying a yellow umbrella. Chucky regrets his decision later but finds only the squeaky Buddha left on his doorstep. Joe wakes up the next day in a motel and, looking for a phone, discovers a change of clothes instead. Anxiously, he opens the curtains only to find a fake window behind them. When he attempts to leave, he realizes the door has no handle. Panicking, he bangs on the door, but there is no response. In time, Joe becomes conditioned to expect food when the scenery changes behind the fake window. Frustrated, he tries to ask the person delivering the food why he's being kept captive, but he is forcefully pushed back through the opening. Fed up with the dumplings he receives regularly, he discards them and turns to vodka instead. His only interaction is when he receives his meals. He releases his frustrations by watching TV. Eventually, gas fills the room, causing him to lose consciousness, and his fingerprints and DNA are taken. In 1994, Joe sees a news report accusing him of assaulting and subsequently killing his ex-wife, Donna. Lacking social interaction, he begins hallucinating and believes a bellhop is in his room. Desperate for companionship, he draws a face on a pillowcase using blood and cuddles it affectionately. In 1997, a rat enters his room and Joe is delighted to have a friend. He provides a home for the rat and it eventually gives birth. One day, Joe wakes up to find the nest empty and he mourns the loss of his rodent companion. When his meal arrives, he uncovers the silver platter to find the rat and its babies inside. Overwhelmed, he bangs his head against the door and, unsatisfied, shatters a mirror, inflicting further harm upon himself. Upon waking up, Joe is puzzled to see that his injuries have been expertly tended to, the mirror is gone, and there is a new object in his room. As he examines the object, Cheney, the proprietor of the prison, observes him through a camera. In 1999, Joe stumbles upon a TV show called Mysteries of Crime, which features his alleged murder of Donna. The program includes interviews with Mia's adoptive parents, Ken and Shirley Roos, followed by Mia's solo performance. This reignites Joe's determination and he decides to write a letter to Mia, vowing to escape from his unjust imprisonment. Joe embarks on a personal transformation, quitting alcohol and using TV programs productively. In 2000, Joe starts using a pen to tattoo himself, adding one line for each year he has been captive. In 2001, he begins listing down names that could be responsible for his abduction, while also working on dismantling the tiles in his bathroom. He takes note of the restaurant that supplies his dumplings. By 2013, Joe has loosened enough tiles to create a passage and manages to squeeze through the crack, confirming his escape. He takes his first letters and packs them in his pillowcase. However, he becomes captivated when Mysteries of Crime airs an interview with Mia, leaving him torn between watching or continuing his escape. Suddenly, smoke intentionally fills the room, causing Joe to lose consciousness. When he wakes up, he finds himself inside a trunk in a field. He is clean-shaven, wearing a suit, and all his letters are with him. Alongside the letters, he discovers a purse of money and a smartphone with Mia's picture as his wallpaper, along with a timer set for 84 hours. He spots the same yellow umbrella from 120 years ago and follows it. The umbrella is now being held by a man named Johnny. A volunteer nurse named Marie Sebastian intervenes, and Dr. Tom Melby apologizes for Johnny's kleptomania. Joe flees the scene but is caught by Marie, who offers her business card in case he needs assistance. Night falls, and Joe seeks refuge with his friend Chucky. He recounts his story, and Chucky wonders what he could have done to deserve such a fate. Shortly after, Joe's smartphone rings, and a man with a British accent instructs him to examine his past before hanging up. The man wishes him happiness with his daughter, Mia. After the call, Joe retrieves his list, and he and his friends spend the entire night researching the names. In the morning, Chucky checks on Joe and finds him collapsed. He calls emergency services but remembers that Joe is a fugitive and decides to call Marie instead. Marie administers fluids and assures Chucky that Joe will be all right. Chucky reflects on the events of the previous night and Joe's mysterious reappearance after 20 years. Meanwhile, the bar owner excuses himself to open the bar, and Marie stays behind while Joe recovers. Intrigued by his letters, she reads multiple letters before Joe wakes up and becomes furious at her intrusion. He snatches his letters back, and Marie confesses that she believes he has been unjustly imprisoned and wants to make up for the lost time with his daughter. Joe, still wary of her knowing too much, intimidates her but eventually lets her go. Marie offers to connect him with authorities who could assist in his search. Joe refuses, but just then he receives a text asking if he has begun his search. His first stop is the nursing home of his old boss, Bernie. Surprisingly, Marie is with him. Joe readies his weapon but reconsiders upon seeing Bernie's frail state during lunch. As they eat, Joe recalls the takeout meals he was constantly served, prompting Marie to assist in searching for restaurants with the name Dragon. Through her amusement, they sample various dumplings but don't find the familiar taste until Marie suggests a different place. Joe waits in the restaurant until a regular customer with an unusually large order enters. Sensing a potential lead, he follows the delivery boy to the back, swiping a hammer and hijacking a bike. Joe trails the delivery man's vehicle to a warehouse facility and infiltrates it. He swiftly dispatches the receptionist and his target, ascending via the elevator while using food to hide his face. Joe bypasses the secure entrance and eliminates the next receptionist. Sheeny, annoyed by the delayed food delivery, emerges from his office but gets knocked out. Regaining consciousness, Sheeny confesses that he's merely the owner and doesn't know the identities of his clients. Joe applies a touch of coercion and Sheeny directs him to tape recordings with details of his imprisonment. Joe listens to the recordings and recognizes the same British accent he heard before. Meanwhile, an employee stumbles upon the lifeless bodies and triggers an alarm. Moments later, Joe, armed with a box cutter and hammer, exits the room with Sheeny as his hostage. The fugitive releases his hostage to escape, but a gang of thugs confronts him. Joe easily incapacitates the first wave but faces more attackers as he descends further. After a fierce battle, Joe finally exits the building, barely able to stand. A car is waiting for him, and he's helped inside by a man with a British accent. At the bar, Chucky hears a blaring horn and rushes out to find his heavily injured friend. Meanwhile, Marie is at home researching the crime Joe is being accused of when she receives a call. Later, Joe wakes up, dressed and eavesdrops on Marie, refusing Tom's offer to bring him to the hospital. They get into an argument and Marie storms out. The smoke clears as the doctor checks Joe's stab wound, finding no complications. He implores Joe not to hurt Marie and leaves. When the nurse returns, she helps Joe put on his freshly cleaned suit. Echoing Tom's words, Joe drives Marie away, telling her never to come back. At the bar, Joe receives a call that quickly ends, prompting him to call back. Unexpectedly, the person he's calling is in the bar. Realizing this, Joe grabs a knife and charges, but he is easily subdued by the man's companion. Chucky attempts to help, but the other patrons side with the stranger. The stranger takes Joe's list, tears it to pieces, and informs Joe that he has Mia. He proposes a game of prizes, including a videotape of Donna that can prove Joe's innocence and a handwritten confession by the stranger claiming responsibility for the crime and Joe's imprisonment. The final prize is $20 million worth of diamonds, and the stranger challenges Joe to answer 2 questions within his remaining 46 hours. The stranger's name and why Joe was imprisoned for 20 years. Refusing to play, go to the police, or warn Mia will lead to her death. To prove his power, the stranger shows Joe a live stream of Marie in danger. Joe has no choice but to accept the challenge and hurries to Marie's address. When he arrives, he is greeted by Sheeny and his men. They subdue him and place him on a table. But before the jailer can commence his revenge, his phone rings. Despite Sheeny's claims that nothing can stop his retribution, he accepts a bag full of cash left by the door. The men leave and Marie breaks down in Joe's arms. Meanwhile, the stranger and his companion watch them through cameras planted throughout Marie's house. The companion exposes extensive scarring on his chest and shoulder while they observe. Joe looks through Marie's family pictures while she's in her room. Moments later, the nurse emerges with bags announcing that she no longer feels safe in her home. Joe receives a call, but it quickly hangs up. He remarks on the unique ringtone of the stranger, and Marie uses an app to determine that it's the anthem of Evergreen Academy, Joe's old school. However, there are almost no traces of it left on the internet. The nurse tracks down its previous headmistress, Edwina Burke. Mary takes a moment to sit close to Joe, their faces just inches apart. Despite the tension and the gravity of their situation, Marie leans in and kisses him softly. Joe, still carrying the weight of his past, remains stoic, but appreciates the moment of intimacy between them. They finally arrive at their destination, where Murray bravely steps forward to face Edwina, who has invited her for tea under the pretense of discussing Joe. Inside, the nurse asserts Joe's innocence, suggesting that someone else from Evergreen Academy may be responsible for the crime. Meanwhile, Joe discreetly sneaks inside the building, making his way towards the bookcase. As Edwina serves tea, she expresses her relief upon hearing of Joe's innocence. Murray engages in conversation with the former headmistress, seeking any information about individuals who may hold a deep grudge against Joe. Unfortunately, Edwina has no suggestions. The nurse then inquires about the fate of the school, learning that it was sold to a corporation that left it abandoned. After their meeting with Edwina, Marie and Joe decide to reconvene at Evergreen Academy. However, upon reaching the location, they discover that it is heavily guarded. Opting for a more covert approach, they check into a nearby motel to wait for darkness to fall. In the motel, they take a moment to relax and unwind. Marie decides to take a bath, and in the midst of their vulnerable state, she offers to change Joe's bandage. One thing leads to another, and their connection deepens in an intimate moment together. Unbeknownst to them, their intimate moment is being observed by the stranger Adrian Price and his companion. The stranger becomes intoxicated by the power he holds over Joe and Marie as he watches their vulnerability. Later, Chucky recalls his connection to Adrian and immediately calls his friend to warn him about the dangerous individual. However, Joe's smartphone has been cloned, allowing Adrian to remove any trace of Chucky's call. Soon after, Adrian appears at Chucky's bar, furious about his sister being referred to as a harlot. Joe and Marie continue their investigation at Evergreen, delving into the school records. They discover a likely candidate in the yearbook, Adrian Price. As they leave Evergreen, Marie finds a chilling package inside her car containing a dismembered tongue. Concerned for Marie's safety, Joe persuades her not to confront Adrian directly as it wouldn't change her circumstances. They return to the motel, and Joe asks Marie to promise that she'll stay inside while he goes to confront Adrian. With Marie's truck, Joe drives off to face Adrian, equipped with a tire wrench for protection. He calls Tom, giving him directions to Marie's location, ensuring her safety. Following Adrian's directions, Joe arrives at a set of mysteries and crimes orchestrated by Adrian. Adrian reveals that Joe was the only viewer of the show, and he starts stirring Joe's memories by playing an interview with Mia's adoptive parents. As Joe watches, he is reminded of the day he vowed to change his life. A chandelier starts playing, and Joe sees a beaten Mia playing behind a glass enclosure. Adrian revels in Joe's anguish, emphasizing how people readily believe what they see on TV. Joe demands to know Mia's whereabouts, but Adrian challenges him to contemplate why he was set free instead. Adrian plays family videos of Mia, gradually revealing that Marie is Mia, the daughter they share. Overwhelmed by the revelation, Joe is left speechless as Adrian taunts him. The mastermind kisses Joe and pulls out his gun, with childhood videos of Mia playing in the background. Adrian ends his own life, leaving Joe in a state of shock and disbelief. Joe decides to send the majority of the diamonds, the supposed present for Marie's 3-year-old self, along with a letter expressing his happiness with her. However, they realize they can't be together. Marie uses the money to move away, carrying the memories of their time together and the happiness they shared. Joe spends his remaining years alone in his solitary room.